Ah, ok. Es la última clase. La última clase, sí. Bien. Buenos días, buenos días. ¿Cómo están ustedes? ¿Están bien? ¿Todo bien? ¿All good? Bien, magnífico. Ok. Ah, lo que vamos a hacer en la última clase, what we're going to do in the last class is we're going to be working today those ER and IR regular verbs. We're going to work in how you ask questions using those verbs, how we answer questions using verbs. And we're going to keep with just that kind of stable of verbs, the ones that we have been working, kind of remind you where all these resources are. If you want to keep studying with me or with somebody else or on your own or however it is.
Okay.
And all that sort of thing. So a lot of practice today. And I'll bring up the screens that you need as we move along. Okay, vamos a ver. What we're going to take a look at first is this basic verb chart. And I had sent this to you a while back, and do keep this. You're free to keep all these files that I have sent to you. Do keep these because they are a helpful reference for you. They show you the verb, ser, which you have done long ago, estar, which you've done long ago. I is only that once, so it doesn't get a chart. Yeah. Tener and ir. These verbs down here are the first ones you start to learn, and they're super helpful. Also, querer is super helpful, right? To want to love. And then this group here, what we call the regulars, are what we're really going to focus on. The ones that are below this top layer are the common verbs, common but irregular, sadly. But this top tier is all what we call the regular verbs. And again, just a reminder, the reason we call them regular verbs is that they follow a regular pattern, and they're always going to use a particular type of conjugation to tell you who is doing the action in the present tense. Okay. Today we're going to focus on the ER and IR. If we get enough time, we may blend in some of those AR verbs as well. And okay, so a review of ER and IR endings. The yo verb forms for present tense are always easy because yo, I ends in o, and the verb endings for yo in AR and ER and IR all do the same thing for yo, and that is they end in an o. So okay, that one is not a tough one to do. But again, an S at the end with the telltale vowel would being the E sound for the ER verbs is for tu. The naked vowel by itself to use for third person singular, meaning one human being, is the E, right? For ER and IR verbs, they share. The plural of él or ella is third person plural, and that means they take the vowel e, but they add an n onto the end of it. So the color codings on these charts tell you where you see patterns, similarities in conjugations, right? And where they vary, where they differ is in the nosotros forms. The ER and IR verbs split off to do different things for nosotros, and they're going to follow the vowel in the ER or the IR for nosotros. So ER verbs will take hemos, IR verbs will take imos. Okay, so that's the only part where they split off. They do split off for vosotros, but Latin America, of course, does not use vosotros, which is the plural of tu. So we'll leave that for you if that is important for you. And one thing I do want to show you is that this video I sent off for you to watch during the week is important because it practices the ERIR verbs, and it shows you this thing, which is kind of a precursor, the boot. And it tells you that any conjugations, any verb forms that are in the boot, meaning the yo, the tu, the third person, whether that's singular or plural, they are going to share the same kinds of verb forms. But if we're talking about nosotros and vosotros, which are outside the boot, that is where the ER and IR split off and do their own separate kinds of conjugations, right? The hemos endings and the imos endings for nosotros. So this is an important thing. This boot thing is also important because I'm going to show you in a moment, en un momentito. Get my screen back. This boot is important because if you move on later in Spanish and start studying other verbs that are also irregular, because there are a lot of patterns with these verbs that have to be learned, that boot formation is going to mentally be an important thing to recall. There are some verbs which are called stem changes, stem changing verbs. And those verbs are going to do funny things when they're inside that boot. So keep in mind that boot concept for verb conjugations is important for you later on if you keep studying, because other kinds of very common verbs will use that boot pattern for you to remember what kinds of changes happen with other kinds of verbs. So back on to ER and IR verbs. ER and IR verbs are what we're going to use today. I do want to ask you right now, before we start our practice, if you've got any questions after watching the video, any questions before we start? Anything that wasn't clear from the video you watched? No, nada. Bien, all good. Todo bien. Magnífico. Okay. Aquí vamos. Here we go. Let's take a look. We're going to go to our big chart with the pictures. Yay. I need to move this around a little bit because I need to make these a little bit bigger, so they're easier for you guys to see. Okay, right about here, I think. Okay. So again, this is the double-edged sword. We have to, right now at the stage you're at, the most important thing is to start to recognize vocabulary. Oh, that word is a verb. It talks about an activity, an action, okay? So we need to know what the verbs mean, what their equivalent is in English, and we're going to be practicing how to conjugate them. So, we've got comer, to eat, leer, to read, comprender, to understand. Actually, the dirty little secret is that this other verb, which is a synonym, it means the same thing, but it's a different word, is entender. That is a little more common, but it gets a funny stem change, which you see underlined there. So we're going to practice with comprender today. It's like saying comprehend or understand. They mean the same thing, right? But they're two different words. Okay. Vender, to sell, think vending machine. Responder, there we got a nice cognate. Beber, to drink. This is shown with alcohol because often this is used with alcohol, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be used to talk about drinking water as well. Vivir, to live. Abrir, to open. Think abracadabra. Yeah, open something up. Escribir, to write. ER and IR verbs are the two smaller categories compared to the AR categories, but we're going to practice these with this segment here, which you'll have to keep. And we're going to do two of these together. And then I think I'm going to have you do maybe some work in smaller groups after the two we do together. So we're going to look at the example and the second one below it. And then we'll have you do like 4 or 5 separately and come back and compare and see how you did. Okay. So el ejemplo, the example, responder. Our subject, the person for whom we have to conjugate, is going to be Luisa, right? So we're talking about one person, happens to be a gal, but that kind of doesn't matter. One person, we use that third person singular as if it were ella, she. To change that verb responder so that it works with Luisa, it becomes Luisa responde. Luisa responde. And what it means is Luisa responds, Luisa answers, Luisa is responding, because responder means to respond or answer. Okay? So we're going to conjugate the verb. That's our first task. And the second task is to say, is to say, well, what does that mean to say Luisa responde? Well, in English, we would use that idea to say Luisa responds, or she answers, or she is responding. Those are the two common things we'll say in English. It'll mean that same thing as Luisa responde. Okay, let's take beber. And of course, for beber, we have to take off the ER. We always have to take off the ER or take off the IR, whichever kind of infinitive it is. We've got to take that ending off first. And to make it work with, to give it a conjugation for yo, it will be yo
Bebo.
bebo. Yo bebo. What does that mean? How would we say that idea of yo bebo in English?
I drink.
I drink, or it might be I am drinking, right? We might use either one of those structures in English to say that idea. So I drink, I do drink, I am drinking. Okay. Bien. Remember that the yo is here as a prompt. It is there to tell you who the subject is. When most people speak, they will not bother to say that pronoun, yo. They just won't, because it isn't necessary. The verb conjugation does all the talking. It already automatically tells you this is the only form that goes, it only matches up with the subject of yo. All right. So because the yo is made obvious by the verb itself, they drop that word yo as a general practice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to give you the next, these next ones here to work on in smaller groups. We don't need all those lines. How confusing is that? Okay, you're going to see these when you go into your small rooms, and I want you to do the same thing that we did with yo bebo, I drink, I'm drinking. Okay, and to do it with a partner. And I'm only going to give you probably about 3 to 5 minutes to do that. And I will send that screen in to your Zoom rooms with you. Okay. And I want you to try to work that out on your own to see if you're getting the concept. And then we'll come back after 3 to 5 minutes and we'll compare notes on what you got for that. Sound okay? See? Bien? Okay. So hit your join button, and I'm going to be putting this screen into the room for you. Uy, 5 minutos. Okay. Set it for about 5. Okay. 1 minuto. Ok, muy bien. Bueno, fácil, Jay? Easy?
Yeah, I had a question. The leer, how to pronounce that? It didn't.
Oh, yeah. That's, you know what? You just bingo. Kudos to you because that's always the question that everybody asks every session. So you asked a really normal question. We're going to go through all those examples. And how you pronounce it is you, because you have two E's that wind up being next to each other. That's the weird thing, right? Two E's in English becomes a long E sound, doesn't it? Yeah. But not in Spanish. It's going to be, we're going to take the le and the hemos or the le and the en, and we just kind of drag out that e sound. When you have two e's next to each other, we kind of drag that out. Okay, so you'll hear how that sounds, and we'll practice that. That's a good one to know. Okay. Was that pretty easy or not? We'll go over what the answers should be. And see, bien? Okay, vale. Magnifico. Vamos a ver. Let's take a look. And we're going to take special care with our leer verb. Bien. Okay. Tú becomes
Vives.
Vives. And it means what?
Vives. You live.
You live or you are living, right? You are living in the Phoenix area, right? Vives, okay? Comprender with usted. We know we've got that comprende, right?
We comprende.
Comprende. And I'm going to add also a little underline or a little bold there. Here's the syllable we punch a little harder. Vives, right? Comprende. There is the syllable that we punch a little harder. Comprende. Comprende means you what?
Understand.
You understand. You get it. Yeah. Wow, you are understanding. Ooh, that's not really a structure we use very much in English. Yeah, do we? So, okay, here comes the big question mark. When we've got leer, with leer, the automatic thing we need to do is to get rid of the ER, but we still have that first E hanging in there. And now for ustedes, you guys, we need this. But how do you say that? It is not lean, right? It's leen. And those two A's are going to, we're going to drag it out. So it's leen. Leen. And we punch this, a little bit harder. Leen. And ustedes, leen means you guys. Leer means to read. So leen means in English, or how we would say it in English would be you guys
read,
or you are reading. Okay, bien. Vale. Nosotros with vivir. We take off the IR from vivir, we get to
vivimos.
Well, it won't be vivemos. It'll be an imos ending. It will get a mos, but with the letter I in front of the mos. Imos on the end. Vivimos. Okay, vivimos. And here is the syllable we punch a little bit harder. Because second to the end, that's what we punch a little bit more. Vivimos. Vivimos means we what?
Live.
We live, or, we are living, Right? We are living in Arizona. Bien. Bueno, a ver. Ooh, I'm trying to stop. My stopwatch keeps going off. Here we go. Bueno. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco. One more. Responder. Los estudiantes
So, responden. Responden.
And the syllable we punch a little harder is this one. So I'll put it in bold. Responden. And in English, the way we would say that same idea is the students.
They answer.
Yeah, answer, respond. There is another verb for answer, but you get the idea. That's what it means. Or they are responding, right? Yeah. Okay, so there we go. We've got bebo. I'll be consistent with that. Bebo, vives, comprende, leen, vivimos, responden. Okay, bien. So we've got our first segment there. Our first segment. Typically, it's a little bit tough for people to start to get used to these. You may ask reasonably so, how long does it take for me to get used to conjugating a verb? And well, that depends. For somebody who speaks French or German, it might come a little bit faster because they're used to that concept of having multiple forms, more so than we English speakers are. Do not be surprised if it takes a while. The other question that always comes up quite often is, well, can't I just say something like, nosotros vivir? Can't I just say nosotros vivir? And won't they get what I mean? Well, they might sort of get what you mean. But they'll be piecing it together like a puzzle of why are they saying it that way? All right. It will be confusing to them to a certain, you can kind of, it will be kind of caveman kind of communication if you don't conjugate the verb, because they expect to hear that, right? That's the way it makes sense to them. So I'm going to send you off to do these next items together as you did the first time through. I'm going to get rid of our excess lines that we don't need there. And you're going to be doing the same thing. Was that too long a period of time or too short a period of time? Is that about the time I allocated about right? Okay. I want you to keep doing the same thing with the second half of this in smaller groups. Again, you're going to see the second half of the screen in your rooms when you hit the join button, and then we'll come back and compare notes again. And now I gotta go pick up my share screen. Okay. Oops. A ver, okay. Okay, still pretty good?
Yep.
Bien. Magnifico. Okay. This is a thing that's always just a tough one for English speakers to get used to. It just is. A ver. Okay. Aquí vamos. Here we go. Let's take a look at what our answers will be for this latter half. Okay. A ver. Okay. If we know the prompt is tú and we need to use the verb comer with tú, what would our answer be? Tú
Como. Or comes.
Comes.
comes. Comes. Comes. And I'll put in bolder print there. There is the syllable that we punch harder. Comes.
Comes.
Comes. And how would we say that idea in English? Tú comes. You
Eat.
eat. You eat, or maybe you are eating, because remember, we can use present tense to talk about you are eating. That's something, that we say sometimes in English that conveys the same idea. Okay, leer. And again, we're going to be starting off with that sound. We dropped the second but now we've got yo.
Leo.
Leo. Yeah, now that's easier to say when it's not two E's next to each other, right? Leen, leemos. We drag out the but this will be the usual short leo, because it's an next to the o. Leo. Leo, and the is going to get a little bit harder punch than that second syllable. Leo, actually it's all one syllable, but Leo. And in English, we would say that by saying I
read.
I read, I am reading, right? You might say I am reading, okay? Vale. Vender with ustedes.
Then.
Venden. Venden. Ustedes gets the same kind of verb as ellos or ellas. It's third person, it's plural. So venden, but we punch this syllable a little bit harder than the other one. We stress it more. Venden, venden. So venden in English, we would say you guys, maybe, or maybe we just say you. You
Sell.
Or you are selling, right? Okay, fantástico. Venden. El turista, we're going to use it with abrir, and we have to drop the IR. El turista.
Abre.
But we're going to punch this part a little bit harder. Yeah, that syllable gets more stress. El turista abre. Y en inglés, the tourist, gotta get my fingers on the right keys. The tourist opens or is opening, right? El turista abre la puerta. The tourist is opening the door. El turista abre su pasaporte. The tourist opens his passport. Whatever that tourist is opening. El turista abre. Okay. Comprender. We're going to use it with nosotros. We take off the ER from comprender first, and we get
comprendemos.
Muy bien, comprendemos. And here is the syllable we stress a little bit harder. Comprendemos, okay? comprendemos. And it means we
understand,
understand. We understand. We get it. We get it. Okay. We understand. And, you might in English say, we're not understanding this concept, but it's not that common to hear understanding. In English, it's possible, but it's not that common. Yeah, it's just the way English structure goes. Okay. Aprender, to learn. Aprender, to learn. We're going to talk about el chico, one kid.
boy, he,
Aprender.
Aprende.
Aprende.
Aprende. And here is the syllable we punch a little bit harder. Aprende. And it means the kid, the boy, is learning, or he learns, right? The boy learns or is learning. Bien. Okay. Bien. Uno más. One more. Uno más. Escribir yo. Oop. Get rid of my.
escribo,
Escribo. And here is the syllable that will get a little harder punch, right? Escribo. I write, or I am writing. Bien. Okay. Fantástico. And there are our conjugations. Okay. Bien. I'm going to leave those up in case you want to look at the answers at a later time. You've already got access to this file, so you'll be able to get back in and see that later on. Does that make sense? Should we stop here in case you've got any little questions? ¿Hay alguna pregunta? Is there any kind of question? ¿Hay alguna pregunta? No. Bien. Okay. So here is a little thing I'm going to show you. The issue with conjugations, because it becomes, we think in that grid because we learn those forms in a grid. So the joke becomes, if you walk up to somebody, you sit down, you're having a cup of coffee with somebody, right? And you want to have a nice live conversation with somebody, and you want to ask where they live, right? Sadly, a lot of times, those of us who learn from English into Spanish start thinking in this grid. And when you're thinking, oh, I want to ask this person, do you live? And it's got to be the formal you, because we just met. So we're not on a tú basis. We're on an usted basis. And so people think in this order, kind of like counting numbers. You know how you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but when you use the numbers, you got to use them all out of order, because, you see a price and it says 50. You're not going to count from 1 to 50, right? It's like that with verbs. People think in order, vivo, vive, yeah. And really what you want is this one. So rather than learning them in order, you've got to know these verbs out of order, if you will, like knowing numbers out of order. So we have to be able to kind of pick them out of thin air, and that's tough for the English speaker. So if you want to ask, where do you live? We're going to have to pair it with the where word, which is donde vive. Donde vive? Where do you live? And and you may use usted, or you may drop the usted. Donde vive usted? Donde vive usted? Yeah. And to pick that vive out of the chart, right? Not be using vivo, the yo one first, but I got to pick this one out, becomes difficult for the English speakers. So it will take a while for you maybe to get to that point, or, maybe it won't take a while. Let's see if we can use a different screen to practice some more of these verbs, see if we can just start to get a feel for using the right form out of order. Okay. Cometer looks kind of like commit, and it does mean that. And this is a verb that we often use to say making mistakes. This is the make mistakes verb. Como se dice, if we take cometer and we want to say, I make a lot of mistakes, it will become yo
Cometo.
yo cometo muchos errores. And typically that yo right here is your prompt, but people will drop that yo and they'll just say, cometo mucho. Lo siento, sorry, lo siento. Cometo muchos errores en español. And, the other person will wave you off because they know that you're going to make a mistake and you're practicing. Meter means to put something inside of something else, like putting something in your pocket or in your purse or in a bag that you have. So meter is a regular verb. If you want to say, oh, you're putting monedas are coins, little metal pieces of monetary things, yeah? Coins. Tú, ¿cómo se dice? You're putting coins in your pocket. Bolsillo is a pocket.
Metes.
Metes. Tú metes las monedas en el bolsillo. Bien. You understand a lot. It's a tú verb again. Tú
Comprendes.
comprendes. Tú comprendes mucho. You understand a lot. See? You're learning to cook. You're learning to cook.
Aprendes.
Tú aprendes a cocinar, and people will typically drop the tú and just ask, aprendes a, or just say, aprendes a cocinar, see? Now we're going to be talking about one person, La Señora Peña, Mrs. Peña, and we want to say she's learning history. La Señora Peña
Aprende.
Aprende la historia. Aprende la historia. Bien. Okay. So there are a few. That's only got 5 examples. So let's take a look at yet a different page. I don't know if this is going to omit vosotros. Let's see. Here we go. Yo with vivir. We want to say what?
Vivo.
Vivo. Bien. Tú, abrir.
Abres.
Abres. Abres. Abres. Bien. They're reading. They, meaning a bunch of gals. They're reading. Ellas
Lean.
Len.
leen. This is one of the hard ones to say. Leen.
Len.
Leen. It's got the double E. That means we drag the S sound out a little longer. Okay. Leen. Leen. Bien. Okay. Darn. I got to put this one in. Oh, I know why. It's got me bumped out. Bien. Okay. Ustedes, you guys are reading.
Lean.
It'll be leen. 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 Okay. Asistir means to attend. It looks like assist, but it does not mean, it is a false cognate. It doesn't mean what it looks like. Asistir means to attend, like a concert, attend like a class. Él, we want to say he's attending. Él
Asiste.
asiste. Él asiste. Bien. I live.
Vivo.
Vivo.
Vivo. I'm writing.
Escribo.
Escribo. Bien. I'm reading.
Leo.
Leo.
Okay. And we want to
Leo.
refine.
Leo.
Yeah. It won't be Leo. It'll be
Leo.
Leo. Leo. Now I'm going to tell you why it's important that it's Leo. There is a word that exists that is Leo, but it means it's not a verb at all. It means something very different. Leo means a mess. Like mi casa es todo un lío. My house is a huge mess right now. So Leo.
Leo.
Subir means to go up, like to go upstairs, to go up steps, to climb up.
Subimos.
Subimos. Excelente. Subimos. You understand. Usted
Comprendes.
and no S at the end. Comprende. Comprende. No S at the end. Comprende.
Oh.
Comprende. Right? Okay? O comprende. They're repeating some here. Vivo. I'm selling.
Vendo.
Vendo. Vendo.
Vendo.
Correr means to run. To run. So to say we're running, it's
Corremos.
corremos. Okay. Now, the little hint, as you hear people talking in context, because we're going to see an in context example soon. When you hear people using a must verb, even if you don't know what the verb is yet, at least you know that must sound. It means, oh, we're doing something. You at least know a half of that communication, that it means it's a we verb. So corremos, we're running. I'm writing. Escribo. You're attending like a concert. Asistes, perfecto. They're selling. Venden. You're drinking.
Bebes.
Bien. I'm going up.
Subo.
One good thing to know about that verb subir. Subir means to go up like a stairs or to go up to a different floor. It also means to get into a vehicle. So if somebody says, subo al autobús. I'm getting up into the bus, because you have to step up to get into the vehicle. Okay. So there we go. I'm going to send you that link so that you can practice on your own, because that will send you different prompts every time. There's also a new link on it, and I'm going to just show you how this one works, because this also does I believe a pronunciation. Does it? Vamos a ver. I need to double check that. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the sound. You may not be able to hear it, but you will when you do it on your own computer. So it'll give you, okay. When I give you the link for this, what you want to do when you go into this site is you want to click on take out that vosotros, unless you specifically want to practice the vosotros forms, right? For Latin America, vosotros is irrelevant. For Spain, it's very commonly used. So it depends on where you're traveling, right? But comer. So we got comer, and comer will tell you how to pronounce that. I don't think you can hear it on this screen, but the yo form will be como. And it will give you an actual verbal sound. It will pronounce that verb for you. Actually, I'm going to take this off and put it on the screen here. I'm going to flip my screens so that you can hear what it sounds like, because I think I have to turn on the sound on the share for you to get that. So I want you to get the feel for how that's going to feel when you practice that on your own.
Comer.
Now it's giving us a different verb, asistir, and it's giving us tú,
Asistes.
asistes.
Tú asistes.
Tú asistes. It's going to give you the actual, how that sounds. Okay. Tú asistes. Bien. It'll give you a new one, aprender. Aprender with tú becomes
Aprendes.
Tú
aprende.
aprendes.
Tú aprendes, and again, you've got the pronunciation done with this.
Tú
So if
aprendes.
you get your cursor on that verb form, it'll pronounce that verb for you as many times
Tú aprendes.
as you need to hear it. Okay. Tú with comer becomes
Comes.
comes.
Tú comes.
Tú comes, right? Okay. Ellos with comer becomes
Comen.
comen.
Ellos comen.
Bien.
Ellos comen.
So
Ellos
yeah, if you
comen.
need to hear it again, you hover over the verb and it'll say it again. So that helps you to hear how does it sound typically when somebody, uses the regular intonation. How does it sound to pull that together? So it's a super good practice site. Okay. Bien. Bueno, let's see this in context now. I promised you we would see something in context. So we're going to take a look at a story where we're going to build this in. And again, I'll give you this website later in the email, but let's see how it all fits together, because when people actually talk or when you read, this is how a story will typically go. This does not have sound for you, but it does give you a word bank. And because we can't know all of these verbs, we've got to learn the vocabulary end of it. Oh, it's going to even use ser, which you've had a long time ago. So here's our word bank. Aprender, asistir, which does not mean what it sounds like in English. Asistir means to attend an event. Yeah. Beber, comer, comprender, escribir. Hacer. You have not seen that verb before. Hacer says irreg. That means it has one irregular form, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time. The irregular form has to do with the form only for yo. That particular verb has two meanings. Hacer means both to do and to make. I know, kind of odd, but that's the way it goes. Hacer, we don't pronounce the H. Hacer will be a regular verb for all the forms, but not for yo. It does an oddball thing for yo, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time. What it does for yo is it puts on a G-O at the end, so it becomes hago. Hago. Okay. Hago is the yo form, but other forms are going to be regular, so they'll sound like haces, hace, hacemos, hacen. Okay. Imprimir, to print, is totally regular. Leer, you've had. Salir, it means to leave a place, to go out of a place. Salir also means to go out with people, like you go out with your friends or you go out on a date. Okay. Salir also gets a go ending for yo, but it will be totally regular for all the other forms. So salgo is oddball for yo. Salgo is the yo, but the other forms will not have a g sound in them. They'll be sales, sale, salimos for imos, right? The we ending, the nosotros ending, salen. Okay. Ser, you've had, that's very irregular. Soy, eres, es, somos, son. And vivir, we've been practicing. So we're going to be using these verbs in this segment. So we're going to look at this top group here. I don't think I can make it too much bigger. I'm making it a little bit bigger. Okay. I'm going to put it in the context of a story and let it roll. And they're going to tell you which verb they want you to use. And they want you to conjugate it for that. Okay. Hola, me llamo Margarita Vallejo. Hi, my name is, me llamo means my name is, me llamo Margarita Vallejo. My name is Margarita Vallejo. And I am attending. How do we change that?
Asisto.
Asisto, excelente. Asisto a la Universidad Politécnica en Quito, Ecuador. I attend the Polytechnic University in Quito, Ecuador. And we want to change vivir to say I live. Yo
Vivo.
Vivo en una residencia estudiantil. I live in a student residence. What do we call a student residence?
Dorm.
A dorm. A dorm. I live in a dorm. So instead of a dorm, they call that residencia estudiantil. Okay. Vivo en una residencia estudiantil con dos amigas. She's telling who she lives with two friends who are super nice, super simpáticas. We need to go way back to this old verb, ser. And she wants to say, not I am super nice, but my friends who live with me are super nice. Dos amigas que
Son.
super simpáticas. Ellas se llaman Patricia y Verónica. Their names are, and she gives their names. Durante la semana, during the week. Durante la semana, nosotras, and she means all of us gals. So she uses a we that's a feminine we word, nosotras. But this verb will not go into a feminine form. It will go into a nosotros form. We learn a whole lot.
Aprendemos.
Aprendemos muchísimo en nuestras clases. We learn a whole lot in our classes. See here does not mean yes. This word see has no accent mark. It means if. If I don't understand, si yo no
comprendo
la tarea en una clase, if I don't understand the homework in a class, I ask a lot of questions. This is going to be hago. This one I need to give you. It's a very irregular form. It's the only hacer form that goes weird or irregular. Hago muchas preguntas. This is a common way of saying I ask a lot of questions. In Spanish, you make a question. Hago una pregunta. It's a common way to phrase that. Todos mis profesores and all of my teachers are patient. Way back to that old verb ser. Son. Todos mis profesores son pacientes y explican todo. All my profs are patient and they explain. And look at what happened here. I'm surprised. They didn't do it because this is an AR verb. Explican todo. They explain everything. Explican todo. Explican comes from explicar. Explicar. And when you hear that explican, you know it's talking about more than one person doing that work, that activity of explicar. Explican. They explain everything. Okay? Bien? Let's take a look at one more segment. Salir means to leave. Ooh, sadly, they put this in a yo form. This is the only form of salir that is irregular. So I need to give this one. This is one of the what they call the go verbs. Some verbs in Spanish, a few you need to kind of get used to it, are what we call go verbs. And that means they're irregular only for yo, and the yo form gets a go at the end. And the other forms of the verbs don't do that. So los sábados, on Saturdays, sábado is Saturday. So los sábados makes it every Saturday, like a habit. Okay. Los sábados yo salgo de la residencia con mis amigas. On Saturdays, I leave the dorm with my friends. Con mis amigas tells who you do it with. Con means with. Papaya.net. Un café internet muy popular. An internet cafe. Yo necesito, that tells who needs something, right? I need. Necesito usar, I need to do what? I need to
Use a computer.
Use a computer.
use a computer. Allí, there. Porque no hay una en la residencia. Because there isn't one at the
Dorm.
dorm. Okay. Primero, yo. First, I read. Primero, yo
Leo.
Leo.
leo un periódico online. People may say online or en línea. They may use either phrase. En línea means the same thing. Leo un periódico online and I do this too.
Escribo.
Escribo mi correo electrónico. I write my email. Veronica, she prints out her homework. Veronica,
Imprime.
and it won't be imprimo,
Imprime.
imprime, she prints out. Imprime su tarea para la clase de física, for physics class, para la clase de física, and she makes 2 copies. We're still talking about Veronica, and we're going to use hace, talking about Veronica. Veronica,
Haces.
hace. Hace with no S at the end, yeah?
Oh, she.
Hace. Yeah, she does, right? If I said, Veronica, if I called her by her name, Veronica, haces 2 copias. Are you making 2 copies, right? Haces means I'm talking to you, and maybe I'm talking to you being Veronica. But Veronica hace 2 copias. She makes 2 copies. A Patricia le gustan mucho las computadoras. This is a special verb form. This is a verb gustar, which means to like. We didn't get to the like verb, but the like verb is different from the other verbs in Spanish. It does something special and different, and it does not conjugate the verb for the person who likes, but for the thing that is liked. Because what it really is saying is computers are pleasing to Patricia, which sounds totally weird, but that's the way they use that structure in Spanish. A Patricia le gustan mucho las computadoras. Patricia likes computers very much, but literally computers are very pleasing to Patricia. Sounds weird in English. Y hoy ella, and now she is learning. She is learning to use the new iMac. Wow, that's kind of old. Ella aprende. Wow, iMac is no longer very new. Usar el nuevo iMac en el café. Okay, so you get an example of how we use these in context. Okay. When you get down to the end, you can hit correct. Well, actually, since there aren't too many, we'll do all of these together. And if you want to drill yourself on it again, I'll show you this I'll give you the link for this website. Nosotras no. Oh, we're going to say we don't do this. The way we say we don't do something to negate is to put a no in front of the verb. So we're going to say we don't leave the cafe, or we're not leaving the cafe now. Nosotras no salimos. Nosotras no salimos del café. We don't leave the cafe now. We're not leaving the cafe right now, ahora. Porque la comida de papaya.net es fantástica. Oh, we're not leaving because we eat there too. The food is great. Wow, the food is super good. La comida de papaya.net es fantástica. Primero nosotras, first we read the menu. Primero nosotras
Leemos.
leemos, and that sounded perfect. We dragged the S sound out a little longer. Primero nosotras leemos el menú y después and later, después means later, y después and later we eat.
Comemos.
Comemos empanadas. Empanadas are a special dish in many parts of South America. They're kind of like, well, dumpling doesn't sound quite right, but it's a pastry covered dish, veggies and meat put into a pastry type dough, cooked empanadas. Y para beber and to drink, naturalmente, naturally, we drink papaya juice. Beber is going to become bebemos. Bebemos jugo de papaya. And if you come back to this and try it again, you hit the correct button as you finish up. If you have any errors, it'll show you what you missed, what you didn't. I'm going to send those practice pages off for you to do on your own. Okay. Bien. You guys are definitely getting the hang of it. I can tell. So let's throw one extra thing into the mix here. And that one extra thing is going to be how we ask questions. Because when we ask questions, we're going to need to conjugate a verb to ask a question. Oh, sadly, it's what we have to do. So, let me pull this up so you see what we're doing. How we ask questions, or perhaps I should phrase this as how do we ask questions? That do word is what we have to plug in English, okay? And questions might be yes, no kind of questions, yeah? Or they might ask for more information, okay? There are different kinds of questions. And sometimes questions are just yes, no questions. And if they're just yes, no questions, then what's going to happen is we're going to take the verb and then who you're asking about. That is how we will phrase a yes, no question. Okay. And let me give you an example of that. Let's take the verb. Vender. Vender, to sell. You might want to ask, you're looking for a t-shirt as a souvenir to take home to somebody, yeah? And you want to ask, oh, do they sell t-shirts here? And that's a yes/no question. So that means the verb is going to come first. Yep. And so we need to take vender and put it into like an ellos kind of ending here. Venden camisetas aquí. Do they sell t-shirts here? That's a yes/no question. And the verb will come first, right? And notice in English, the way we would phrase this will be, do they sell, right? And we need this kind of, well, it's kind of irrelevant to the action of selling, but right, in English, we'll throw in this do or does word a lot, right? But in Spanish, we don't need that word do at all, right? We just put the verb up front for a yes/no question. But the verb will come first. Venden camisetas aquí, right? That is a yes/no question. You might want to ask, and again, the word order is going to be the verb first, to ask about what you are doing. Are you drinking coffee? Are you drinking coffee, right? We are going to use beber here. And because I'm asking you, and I'm going to say we're asking you in a friendly sense. Can't get in a friendly sense. It'll be, ¿bebes café? Are you drinking coffee? Or maybe you don't know what somebody customarily drinks. You're going to order stuff for them. You want to know, do you drink coffee or do you drink tea? Or do you not have that at all, right? Do you drink coffee, right? If you're ordering, maybe you want to know if somebody actually drinks that substance or what actually they are drinking. Are you drinking coffee? Whoop. Are you drinking coffee? Okay, so for a yes/no question, the verb comes first, right? Venden camisetas aquí. Bebes café. Okay, that is the normal order for a yes/no question. Yeah. Or yes/no questions. And yes/no questions, en español, sí o no, right? And the answer to that we're anticipating is just going to be yes, they do, or no, they don't, right? The way we answer that is, well, we're talking about do they sell? So when you answer it, it's, sí. Venden camisetas aquí. Yeah, they sell t-shirts here. Sí, venden camisetas aquí. Okay? The answer to yes/no question for bebes café would be, what would the answer be for this? Bebes café?
Bebos café. Bebo.
Bebo. Yeah, I want you to notice something here. In this one, when I'm asking, do they sell? The answer is still they. Oh, yeah, they sell, right? Do they sell? Yes, they sell them here. And the verb stays the same in the answer. But for this question, if I'm asking you about yourself, when I answer that, I need to change the bebes in the question into bebo for the answer, right? Because bebes café is asking you about yourself, and I don't answer bebes café. Si bebes café is si bebo café. Tu verb question gets a yo verb answer, right? Because now I'm going to be talking about myself when I answer that question. So, yes, no questions do one thing, right? They'll put the verb up front. But sometimes you don't have a yes, no question. What if I get rid of this stuff here? Just put in a regular text box. Okay. What if the question is, if the question needs more than a yes, no answer, then we need a question word, an interrogative. So we're going to pair these up with some verbs to ask some questions. We're going to see what some typical questions look like. And here are the question words. These are the interrogatives. And many, many, many times when it's not a yes, no question, when it's a question that needs more information than yes or no as a response, we plug in these with a verb to ask about things. So, we might need que. We might need cuál or cuáles to say which. We might need quién to ask who is doing something, or quiénes, the plural, to ask like a bunch of people who's doing something, more than one person. We might need cómo. We might need dónde, where, and dónde might take some slightly different forms, like a dónde with a verb of motion, right? Like a dónde vas, where are you going? Or de dónde, like de dónde eres, where are you from, right? So dónde gets some slightly different forms depending on which verb you use with dónde. Cuándo for when. A qué hora also asks kind of the same thing as cuándo, but more specifically at what time, right? Cuándo and a qué hora are both interrogatives that talk about time, but cuándo might be more general, whereas a qué hora is very specific. It wants to know an exact time of day, right? Cuánto, how much. Cuántos can be a plural form, or cuántas a plural, meaning how many, and por qué. So let's see how we're going to ask questions. So how would you answer questions? I need to take this point out. How would you ask a question? Right? Any old question, right? How would you use a question using interrogatives? Well, what's going to happen is that interrogative is going to come up front. So, we're going to take a look down here first. In Spanish, when we phrase a question, when we ask a question, the question word order is generally, in a yes-no question, the verb comes first, right? Or here's what we're going to take a look at. The question word, not the question verb, because it's not a verb. The question word will come up, and then we're going to have a verb next to it, next to the person you're asking about or the other information, right? in English, a lot of our questions get these words do or does, but do or does as a question prompt, that word does not even get translated when we ask in Spanish, okay? So let's take a look at that. And I've got this do thing. You may ask somebody, what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for breakfast? And the do is a question prompt that we throw in to signal to somebody in English. We're asking a question. What do you eat? And in Spanish, the what part is going to be que. So here it comes. Question word and then our verb. Do you eat? ¿Qué comes? So I'm just going to leave this as here are some sample words, some sample questions of how we often ask questions. I'm going to try to make this bigger. Here we go. The way you ask, what do you eat for breakfast? ¿Qué comes de desayuno? ¿Qué comes? What do you eat? Como cereal, como pan tostado, I eat toast, toasted bread. Como huevos, I eat eggs, right? The answer to that is a tú verb, so it's going to get a yo answer when you answer it, right? A yo type verb will be in the answer. So, ¿qué comes de desayuno? I answer it with a yo verb because I'm asking you about yourself. Como huevos. I eat eggs. Como jamón y huevos. I eat ham and eggs. Como cereal. I eat cereal. Those will be normal responses. Okay. Here's a yes/no question. Verb up front. Okay. Cocinas para el desayuno. Do you cook? Do you cook for breakfast? Yeah. Maybe you don't cook. Maybe you just use cold cereal, right? So that's a yes/no question answer. What do you drink in the morning? ¿Qué bebes por la mañana? ¿Qué bebes por la mañana? What do you drink in the morning? If it's asking, you drink, the response is going to get a yo verb in the answer, right? Bebo café, bebo té, bebo jugo, bebo agua, anything like that. Let's plug in a different one idea altogether. Somebody may typically ask you where you live. ¿Dónde vives? Right? ¿Dónde vives? We've got an interrogative verb paired with, an interrogative word, ¿dónde? Paired with a verb. Do you live? Where do you live? ¿Dónde vives? We need a yo type verb in the answer. And so how would we answer that question? ¿Dónde vives?
Vivo.
Bueno. Vivo en, I live in, vivo en.
Arizona.
Yeah. So generally when you're traveling, they're going to expect you to hear a country first. Vivo en Estados Unidos, right? Vivo en Estados Unidos. I live in the United States. Vivo en la ciudad de Scottsdale. I live in the city of Scottsdale. But this just gives you a little precursor, a little kind of an intro to how you'll hear people typically use these verbs to ask you a question, right? They'll have an interrogative word like where or what, and they'll pair it up with a verb. Oh, we're up to our 11 o'clock hour already. Bien. Okay. Bien. It gives you, I know that's a short intro, but that gives you an idea of how people will use these verbs to ask you questions. Bien. Okay. Todo bien? And I'd love to do more practice, but we're at 11 o'clock and I'm sure you have other things to do with your day. So, muy bien. Fantástico, excelente. Si ustedes quieren continuar, if you want to continue, we've got the other courses that are the step 2 classes, not the step 1, which just repeats all this information. And the step 2s meet on Monday, para que sepan, so you know. And bueno, alguna pregunta? Any other kind of question before we leave today?
Just thanks a lot. And
De nada. Fue un placer. It was a pleasure. Yeah. And, this kind of thing, it does take a lot of practice and a lot of repeating and a lot of listening. I'm going to give you in the last email takeaway there is a particularly good channel that has some very good storytelling videos. And but you'll have to look for things that are in the like super beginner category. But they speak very slowly and they tell little stories using these verbs that can get you used to how somebody pieces together these verbs to talk about something that is happening or describe a daily situation. Those will be good things for you to listen to from here on out. Bien? Okay?
Thank you so much.
De nada. Es un placer.
Muchas gracias.
Mucho gusto. Okay.